What's going on, my friend? Coach Grant Eilertson here, and in today's video, I got a real heater for you. We are bringing on my good friend Robb Quinn, the owner of thesalesagency.com, to discuss the ins and outs and the big picture of sourcing, hiring, training, and managing an epic outbound setter team so that you can close more sales and change more lives. All right, let's go ahead and dive right on into it. So today I got with me the owner of thesalesagency.com, Mr. Robb Quinn. And if it wasn't crystal clear by the record behind him, this guy is responsible for multiple millions in online sales. He knows his and I'm super excited to have him here to talk with you guys today about the high level of sourcing, hiring, training, and managing an outbound setter team so that you can close a lot more deals and change a lot more lives. Robb, dude, super stoked to have you on here. You want to give people just a super quick overview of who you are and how you help people, and then we'll dive right on in?
Yeah, man. So, dude, appreciate you having me on here. This channel is awesome. So, when it comes down to what we do, how we help people, we know a big piece of the market is to be able to see, hey, how can we bring in more appointments if I have no money? Right? So we help people structure outbound teams for that reason. Or the other half of it is, man, we're spending a lot of money on ads. I want to figure out how to get my cost per acquisition lower. So what can I do to hedge against my ad spend to lower the cost? So outbound has been the secret sauce that basically helps you do one of those two things, starting out or scaling to that 8-figure range with higher profits. So.
I love it. Yeah, a lot of people ask me because I build sales teams, obviously, hey, can you help me set up my outbound team? And that is not something that I touch. So if you are curious to learn more about what that looks like, or if you are at a point in your business where you know you need to offload sales and you want to have outbound be a big part of that business, Robb Quinn is 100% the guy to get in touch with. And I know I mentioned thesalesagency.com. It'll also be linked down in the description. But let's go ahead and look at some of the really key must-knows about this space.
Yeah, man, definitely. So in the terms of, let's start from the top, right? In the terms of actually sourcing and bringing in the right people. So I'll say out of the gate, what a lot of people want to do with outbound is let me leverage my network, right? It's always the first thing to do. And without question, start there, right? It doesn't cost you anything. What I would definitely adhere to is just to make sure you have a really strong interview process and characteristics in the people you are looking for, because you'll notice that your network can tend to bring in a lot of people, but they may not necessarily be the ideal candidate that could best perform in the position.
Yeah.
Right. You might vibe really well with them. You guys might get along really well, but that doesn't necessarily reflect on performance all the time.
Give me one of the most high leverage questions that really separates the the good from the bad when you're doing sales interviews for this kind of role. Is there? I know you've got a lot of them, but what's the number one?
Yeah, there's a handful. This one's going to seem really common sense, but I'm going to explain the reason why it's so important. Are you available full time? I know this is going to sound like a really elementary question for a lot of people watching this. And there's a lot of other questions we ask, but in the terms of one that's typically overlooked, I think this is the most overlooked. And the reason why is because a lot of people will bring appointment setter on part-time because you say to yourself, well, I only need them for about an hour or two, or I only want them to set 1 or 2 meetings a day, right? But the problem with that is when you bring somebody on part-time, it's not just the amount of time they contribute to the company, it's the headspace that they come into the company's time with.
Such a good point.
So what ends up happening is somebody comes in part-time, the expectations are wrong. They don't bleed the company, right? So we like to make sure people bleed the company. I know that sounds a little bit maybe barbaric or intense, but the thing is, man, you've got to be all in what you're doing. I've never met never a top performer, right? I've never met a top performer where I'm like, dude, you are crushing. You got to be given at least 50, 60%. Never.
Right.
Never.
No, so basic, but dude, I could totally see how that gets overlooked because you're looking to just fill a very short term or a small role, especially in the setter space, right? Where you have the intention for them to move up to a sales rep. But
Well, I was going to interject super fast on that piece of it because,
yeah,
and that's
school
another
me.
thing. Yeah, that's another thing people see with appointment setters. You know, they're like, oh, they could bring in a few meetings a week, but our top setter brings in 190 sales calls per month, one person.
190 by
So
himself.
as in like not discovery calls or triage or intro calls or whatever you want to call it. That's like legitimate sales calls that they hop on with our sales team. So when you think about appointment setters, think about it this way: the movie 300, where he runs into that scene and he's like, well, you only brought a few hundred men. He's like, no, I brought 300 soldiers. How many soldiers did you bring? So it's, if you see that scene in 300, like we have two setters, and between the two of them, they book 250 sales calls per month.
That is just savage production.
Yeah. So like last month, we contracted $296,000 on $5,500 in ad spend because we just have a really strong outbound structure. And when people think outbound, you're like, well, I'm already doing that. That's usually the response.
Yeah.
And because people are doing LinkedIn automation or Instagram DMs or cold email or Facebook outreach, Facebook groups, cold calling, there's all the different ways to do it. But saying I do cold DM and I'm okay at it or I'm good at it or it doesn't work is the same thing as saying, well, you're a guy, I'm a guy. If we both go to the same girl, we should both get her. Like it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
You know, just because you speak English and you're a male doesn't give you the same odds. So this is no different.
So on that topic, these two absolute studs that you have, that one that's setting 190 in particular, how soon did you know he had it in him? Like, was this someone that the minute they applied for the job, you were like, oh, this guy's going to be a dream? Was there a question in the interview that really enlightened it? Or was this guy just running the mill until you trained him up?
Yeah, so month one, it wasn't like that. He did about 75 in month one, which
still pretty solid.
Still pretty solid, yeah. And the thing is, we track everybody's inputs all the way down to the granular level of actual hours towards the actions. And we do 3 hours a day in meetings. And then he actually sets meetings for 3 hours a day. So he's on with us 6 hours a day. Now, a lot of people watching this are probably going to say, well, that's a lot of hours in training. It's like, what if you just have him set meetings for more hours a day? He'd have a higher production. But it's the opposite. And that's the problem with most teams is they're like, hey, go to work, give me more. But they don't provide training. So the precision is like watered down.
I see.
So we're constantly critiquing messages. We're constantly finding ways to be able to take different angles to figure out how to best communicate with the person we're talking to on the platform. Because every platform requires, a different response because, the attention span, like the way that they are on the platform is different.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's huge. So 3 hours, is this a daily thing? Do you do daily huddles that last that long? Talk to me, I guess, a little bit more about the training process, because that's impressive production. And I know people are going to want to be able to download just a little bit of Robb's brain and put that into their business.
Yeah, dude. And it's a fun conversation. I love this area of the business. We have a full team, but when it comes to like the management piece of the team, it's just fun collaboration because it's a feedback loop that we create. So when we do our team meetings, it's not a matter of what did you do for us today? Could it have been better? What can we do to support you? Which is like what most companies do. And it's pretty standard. But it's like for us, we're looking for, was there any way it could have been done better? What should this person be doing? Oh, you did book the meeting. Was it quality? Why wasn't it quality? We get the message from the actual sales team because it's kind of like if you do digital marketing for a client and then you say, hey, we just got you this many leads, pay us, right? And then the client says, but the leads were crap.
Yeah.
And then you're like, well, no, it's not. Look how many of these leads we got on here. I can tell you their name, their phone number, their email, but then the client's like, but they're crap. And they're not, but the client thinks that they are. So there's this disconnect. This is where the feedback loop comes into play. We unpack every lead to be able to see what was quality and what wasn't, so we can duplicate the ones that were, and then we can prevent the ones that weren't. So this increases our production because we know exactly what questions to ask. So I'll give you a more specific example. So there was a point where we were booking 20 meetings a day per player. And then, we were like, how can we make the quality better though? So we found that if you ask your heavier qualifying questions after you book the call, the questions like, hey man, just real quick, how many clients did you say you had right now? And it's like, how much are you charging? So we're able to know how much gross revenue they're doing in a month based on those two questions without asking them, so what's your current revenue? Because that sounds salesy. You would never ask that in a sales call in that way. So you don't do it in the DMs either. So we found that you can get more bookings and keep them more quality by asking those questions after you confirm the meeting, get the email, get the phone number, and intro them to the actual closer.
Yeah.
This is that handoff, the transfer of trust. So, but we found that you can book more meetings and volume and increase quality by making that one simple tweak. These are things we find out in the feedback loop.
Dude, we have to pause right here for everyone to have the opportunity to go down below and smash that thumbs up button, because I don't know if you just caught this, but Rob just dropped some absolute gold, and I want to unpack it just a little bit more. So you got to pay your dues, smash that like button. It's the only thing we require for you consuming this content. And Rob, talk to me a little bit more about the call booking to call conduction process, because I'm a big fan of having homework in the time being to make sure that we're, getting a little bit more compliance before the actual sales conversation. But the structure of which questions are asked pre and post call booking, I'm really fascinated if you're willing to open up the tool chest and share a little bit more.
Yeah. And oh man, what I'm going to say is going to be so contradicting to a lot of the market. And it's probably going to ruffle some feathers.
We like that around here.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, so if you're watching this, just be prepared, brace yourself. But the way we see our roles, right? And everybody's is designated. So like our setters are there to create opportunity. Our closers are there to take the opportunity and either close it or follow up and advance it to the time it's closed, right? And then we have a delivery team who their whole thing is to collect delinquents, to renew accounts, and to upsell accounts, so retention. So that's their goal. And we just recently, because of volume, we added in somebody who actually all they do is confirm meetings. And they're the in-between between the setter and the closer. So as your volume, every model is different depending on the size of the company. As volume increases, it makes it easier. We pay them a fee per closed deal, and they help increase the show rates and just confirm the information on the application or the questions asked are actually accurate, because some people just lie on applications to get the phone call.
Oh yeah. More than most people would like to admit.
Yeah, exactly. And as you're doing volume, you're probably watching this like, oh my God, I've been running into that. Like, this is one of the things that we're able to do in between. So this is just somebody that confirms meetings. That's all they do. They do not create opportunity. They don't close opportunity. They just confirm bookings. That's it. And this is going to increase your book call percentage or your book call costs. I'm just letting you know that. But it's worth it because your closer's not getting pissed. Yeah. Because people aren't showing up. Your marketing team's not getting pissed saying like, we're doing everything we can. The automations are in place. We're doing all this extra qualifying. So it just adds that extra step. So this way you can get more people on the phone.
Dude, this is genius. And what you're saying is absolutely true. I've been on the inside of a lot of businesses and coached even more. And I've never actually met someone that has that intermediary role, essentially like verifying the information between the setter and the closer. How did you come up with doing this in the first place?
The feedback loop. It's the biggest thing, man. Just listening to like what's going wrong. So in all of our, because you asked us like how we structure the meetings and stuff and trainings, like in all of our meetings, we do a morning meeting where we are going to go over like what's on the books for today. What do we need to hit our individual numbers? Because every member on the sales team should reverse engineer their weekly numbers to hit their, reverse engineered income goal for the month. So what do we need today in order to hit the daily goal? And then setters do the same thing. And then from there, we have midday check-ins. How far are we from the commitment that we made? What can we do to support you? What can we do to stack on top of that if you already hit? And then at the end of day meeting, that's whenever, where did we land? How could we have done better? And then did we confirm meetings for the next day? And then from there, we go through the feedback. And then, confirm meetings for the next day and do the handoffs. So basically the setter makes sure that the handoff is done on Facebook. We've also noticed that as well. Like if you can connect on Facebook, it's going to be a higher show rate.
Oh, dude, that was a game changer when we started doing that in our business. We'd get booked And there would just be a Facebook group messenger intro where our setter would then basically reassociate with the pain and the promised land that the prospect had been previously discussing. Like, hey, Grant, just finished talking with, Rob, for example, and he mentioned that his challenge is this. He really wants to accomplish goal, but it's been stuck. So connecting you two here so you can strategize. Basically, like making it very clear yet again that this is a problem. And it's so small, but it made a huge difference for us with the show rate and then also the close rate too.
Huge. And even if you pull it off LinkedIn or if you pull it off another platform, bring it onto Facebook, because odds are you're posting a lot of content. Maybe you have a Facebook group, so your assets are there. So anyway, now I'm going to get into the piece that's controversial. So
that wasn't it?
That wasn't it. Okay. So here's a controversial piece. These setters are there to create opportunity, right? You can take feedback to better that process. Like I just gave you an example of qualifying questions after the booked call's confirmed. Which is the same way you would optimize an ad, right? Their front end opportunity. But the same way we don't expect our ads to follow up with our clients, we don't expect our setters to follow up with the prospects. So that's the closer's job. And we're not trying to over-qualify in the DMs because we expect our closers to be closers. Right. We expect them to be able to handle conversations in a way that, can navigate what's going on with that person. So I know in the market right now, especially the internet industry is probably the worst about this. It's where they want to have all this pre-qualifying before they ever meet with the closer. And when I first heard that, I was like, what?
Do y'all not trust your salespeople?
Yeah, I was like, what is a salesperson? It sounds like you should be paying the setter what you pay the salesperson.
Yeah, just a glorified order taker at that point.
Yeah, I was super confused. I was like, dude, if you were to say to Grant Cardone and Jordan Belfort, hey, don't give any leads to the closers unless they're pre-qualified, vetted, and ready to go. They would literally laugh you out of existence.
Yep.
So we're all about leads. Our outbound team is so strong that just give us leads and we will pick the phone up, we'll dial them, we'll DM them, we'll email them. We use every platform. I mean, we make hundreds of calls a day. Our setter to book that 190 sales calls that month, he actually had 4,600 inputs. It was 4,600 something inputs for the month. And a lot of people say to themselves, well, that's not possible. I get blocked on Facebook. That's not possible. I get blocked on Instagram. I can't send that many messages. But that's why he's on multiple platforms doing it. He knows how many of those he can do in a day, what time zones he should be contacting people in because, different times a day. So he knows how long he can work and when to reach out and on what platform.
Yeah.
So we're monitoring this stuff down to the granular minutes to make the most of all of our setters. So,
yeah, I've seen some of the tracking systems that you've shared publicly, at least on Facebook, and you're dialed when it comes to KPI tracking. I'm not going to ask you to pull back the curtain and, of course, share all of the secret sauce there. But what I want to know more than anything is maybe one or two of the mistakes that cost you a lot of money in the process of building such a robust system. Where did you possibly go wrong? Or if you could turn back the hands of time, what would you have done differently to shortcut the process to where you're at now with astronomical numbers in terms of an outbound setting team?
Yeah. Shoot, man, if I were to go back, I would probably say I definitely would not be doing copy and paste messages for number one, which is kind of common. You would think it's common sense, but everyone does it.
Oh, yeah.
So
there's apps and softwares out there that automate your copy and paste messaging. So I know plenty of people are bought into that idea.
We're in a game of opening conversations. And that's what we call it. We're in the game of opening conversations. Whereas if you were to walk up to go get a date, you wouldn't say all right, so I'm going to say, here's my whole life story. If I say it all at once, I'll see how many people say yes. I'm yeah. And it's funny. And you everyone's watching it oh yeah, that sounds kind of silly. But that's what you're doing in the DMs when you copy and paste a message. We're just trying to open a conversation. One of our highest converting opening conversation messages was just, hey, dang. That was it. And they're like, what? It was oh, and then we started in the conversation. All we're trying to do is open it.
Yeah. So, this is so funny, because I see this constantly with people sending cold messages that are, this big, long, scripted almost like a paragraph of just information that frankly I couldn't care any less about. Every time I get one of those, it either stays unread or they just get blocked, because quite frankly, there's no part of me that wants to engage in that style of communication. And what you were talking about, how it's very similar to dating and relationships. Dude, one of the most impactful sales books I ever read wasn't a sales book. It was The Game by Neil Strauss, and studying to understand person to person dynamics. It's huge. So I'm actually not surprised that message had such a good open rate. Like when I do emails, it's my subject line will be like question. And that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
And the open rates are through the roof because people are curious at that point.
Yeah. Or if you have a Facebook group, right, and people are filling out those 3 questions, the first message that we send for the Facebook group is always, hey, just checked out your app. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Like,
just like that?
That's it.
Just checked out your app. Wow.
Yeah. They're like, what?
My curiosity is already peaked.
Yeah. Like what app? And then we just, that's our conversation opener. So it's different depending on the asset you're using.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So yeah, our feedback loops really good. And the next thing I would change would definitely be just track, period. Like, because before I was just doing the messages. And if you want to find out the fastest way to make yourself go insane with your inputs is don't track them, because you're going to feel like you're busting your ass. And then all of a sudden you're not seeing results. But the reality is maybe you're only sending 50 messages a day. It just feels like you're busting your ass. And then you're also not tracking to see what's advancing in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. Like we went 0 for 25 on sales calls last month. And then, So I'm talking to our new sales manager, because as I transitioned out, we're bringing in a sales manager now. He's like, dude, went 0 for 25. Like, do you feel like we should be doing something differently? I was like, well, let's check it out. We checked out the tracking sheets, checked out the pipelines. And I was like, no, don't do anything differently. And I was like, look, here's the number. And we were showing everyone how to read the numbers, right? Because it's kind of like reading sheet music. Like just because you know how to play a song on piano doesn't make you a pianist. It means you know how to play a song on piano. If you can read sheet music and write sheet music, you're a pianist. Like there's a difference. So like I was showing everyone how to read the sheet music. And then from there, I was like, we're going to have a big back half of the month. Don't worry about it. And then sure enough, we closed $296,000 in 2 weeks. And it was, 26 clients in 2 weeks. And so that's just what it is about track your metrics, just do it to get used to the behavior, and then learn to read it. It'll take off a ton of stress.
Well, you've mentioned a couple times like this feedback loop, right? Being a big integral part of why you're able to create such consistent success. And I think on the flip side of it, people get caught into a negative feedback loop, just a downward spiral when they don't track their numbers the way that you're talking about. I just had the opportunity to school one of my sales reps today who was completely out of sorts, just mentally looked like he had been deflated. He's like, dude, I feel like I forgot how to sell overnight. So I was going through his numbers with him, and yeah, he had 4 down days, but his average is still killing it. And because we were able to zoom out and look at the big picture numbers and not break what's not, not fix what's not even broken. And we were able to get him back on track, and he's closing deals today. So I love what you talk about there. What you measure, you can manage, and what you can manage gets improved. But when you don't have a baseline or numbers to actually reference, we're emotional beings. It's really easy for us to fly off the handle, be on a high one day, but then on that low, and we just keep going because we don't have something to reference against. Dude, that's huge.
So I'll add to that too, because you said earlier, it's a numbers game. And like we preach this all the time, that it's not so much a numbers game as much as it is a know your numbers game.
Yes.
And that's what you just said is the reason why. That's why.
Yeah. It's, I see like Grant Cardone talks about sales being a numbers game, like just get as many reps in as possible. And I don't see things that way. I think sales is a relationship game, but if you have no handle on the numbers, then because we're emotional creatures, you're going to fly off the handle and just have insane peaks and valleys, and then possibly burn yourself out of doing sales altogether. Because what he said to me, where he's like, I feel like I forgot how to sell overnight. A couple of years ago, I had the exact same feeling on an account where we had, no shit, a 20% show rate for 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
Full calendars, and then all this empty space, feeling like, this must just be on me. And so that's so key. Track your numbers, know your numbers. Let's see, what have I not asked you that would be really, really important for someone looking to have an epic outbound setter team that performs, books quality appointments, and leads to a lot more closed sales? What does that person need to know that we haven't uncovered yet?
Yeah, when to let someone go.
Ooh.
The smoke screens.
Let's dive into that. That sounds big.
The smoke screens. This is a big one. So 2 things happen. Number 1 is you have one person on your team. You don't have anyone else, but that one person is, I hate using this word because it's just, I don't have a better replacement for it right now. So insubordinate. But essentially where like the team member is just not willing to like mesh with the culture, right? They're basically their own person. They feel like they basically own the company because they're quote unquote the breadwinner. So one of the biggest misses is keeping that person on because you have nobody else. Instead of understanding it's actually better for the company to take a hit on the revenue. You jump back in the trenches and just have to take on more work and hire somebody else. And just understand like you're going to eat crap for a little bit, but it's better than having that person come in to poison the culture.
Yeah.
So that's
long-term damage. Like enlighten everyone just a little bit, like long-term damage of allowing that to continue. If they're still hitting decent numbers, but just killing the company culture because they're coming from that place. It's clear to me what'll happen, but I don't think everyone realizes the consequences.
No, they don't. It's one of the most expensive misses because your clients you're bringing on are going to reflect that person enrolling the clients.
Bingo.
And that's a rough one, man. So that's number 1. Number 2, it actually is a reflection as a business owner or sales manager, whoever decides to keep that person on, it's a reflection of that person's boundaries towards themselves. And the minute that you start like telling yourself, these are my boundaries, I stick to them, you actually don't ever accept that anymore in a company.
Yeah.
So I would say the second thing, big smoke screen, is whenever your team's doing well and you have one person that really isn't doing that well, and you just let it go though, because the rest of your team's doing well. Maybe they fit the culture, but they're not like living up to the performance of the rest of the team. And one of the things that this is our next stage as we move into growing the company past like 4 and 5 players on just the consulting side, which is just closers, not necessarily setters, is that we have mandatory churn. So we come in and actually mandatorily let people go that are at the bottom percentages. So this keeps the A players constantly staying on top. And then everyone we come in, it's a constant competitive environment.
Yeah. It's like an index fund where you're naturally just going to cut the people that aren't performing or the companies that are underperforming for the asset classes that you need to have. And you're obviously letting the A players stay up at the top, but when you trim that fat, the whole thing can fly higher. That's huge.
And the thing is, like what you define as an A player when you start out as a company, like let's say for us, that used to be $100,000 a month. We're like, oh man, this guy's closing $100,000 a month. Like that's great. And then the standards change. Now, like our top closer is going to do $250 this month. That's the new standard, right? So anybody coming in that's not doing at least 100, I mean, that's a massive problem. So like the standards just completely change. Like last month, this guy did 170. All right, the month before he did 40. So it took some coaching and changing up on the way he looked at the leads. And then we changed his follow-up process. So, I mean, that's on the closer side of things, but in terms of the outbound team, all the standards across the company are the same.
Yeah.
So you hold yourself to that.
So you mentioned a couple really important things, and that's one, like respecting your own boundaries as the CEO of your business. I mean, if you're a leader, right, and you're compromising your boundaries, it shows that you are lacking leadership, and A players won't ever want to work for someone that they can clearly see doesn't respect themselves. So that absolutely freaking huge. And you also mentioned, of course, like knowing when it's time to let somebody go. Can you share a little bit, like maybe about the time frame or what to look for? Because insubordination and when they're performing under the radar, but like, how are you making it clear to your team on a consistent basis that this is the standard And on what time frame are you going through to systematically cut that fat?
Great question. Yeah, I was jumping around. I like completely avoided that. So two things.
I'm not going to let you do that. We're pulling the gold right out of you.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's a good question. No, well, there's two things. Well, very clearly two things. Like number one is a scorecard. So when you onboard a new member to your team, they should already know the expectations. So they should know, like, we like to tier up on performance. So like it starts at a lower number, then increases and increases based off of like they have more experience with us. So they know what they need to be hitting within 3 months.
Okay.
Right. So that's the first thing. If they miss those numbers, then pretty clearly they know out of gate during the onboarding, like if you were to close somebody on a sale, like the expectations for the delivery. This is the same. When you onboard somebody, you need expectations for the first 3 months.
Yeah.
And if it misses, then they know what the repercussions are.
Doesn't this also just come down to direct communication? I mean, we compared sales a little bit ago to relationships, and I see such a parallel here. If you aren't vocal about your expectations for a relationship and also receptive to your partner's expectations for a relationship, what chance does it have of sustaining? There's nothing to then gauge it against. It's just now your feelings without what's been communicated. And that's where people just end up drifting apart or having these huge blow-ups because there wasn't good communication on the front end.
Yep, dude, that's so that's huge, because that's another one of our big questions when we interview somebody before we go, because we do an interview, then a mock call, and then we do the onboarding. So during the initial interview, before we move somebody to the mock call, if they make it, is we're here to help you exit the company. So what are your big, and it always throws people off because they aren't hired yet.
Yeah.
And so, and the reason we ask that is, and I tell them, like, I'm not going to be here forever. I was like, yeah, we're going to grow to $100 million by the time I'm 35, but I'm not going to be the CEO forever. I'm eventually going to leave too. So we're here to help everybody exit and figure out what their tour of duty is. So what does your long-term vision look like so we can help prepare you for that?
Oh, I love that.
So that's one of our interview questions, and which throws people off because everyone's like, and I don't know why that question isn't asked, because you can't, the average lifespan of a sales rep is 2 years in a company. The average lifespan of an executive is 5. So to not like set them up to be the most holistic human being that they can in that span of time with you and not know their tour of duty, that's why people quit. And it's like unannounced because you didn't clarify the tour of duty.
I'm looking back at, my business partner, Ben, with the company that we run, High Impact Coach. I was a client of his, and then I ended up taking sales for him part-time, loving it, and then coming on full-time. And I'll never forget that, I told him, hey, I don't know how long I'm going to do this, because obviously, like, I want to get back to running my own business eventually, but I love what I'm doing here in the short term. And he said, dude, I don't care. I'm going to turn you into the best possible sales rep, whether you stay or not. Because I believe that that's the only way to run an effective company long-term, is to train people to be the best, even if you don't necessarily know they're going to stay with you forever. And guess what? I've never been with somebody longer than him, because that's the frame of mind that he comes with. It's like, how can I set you up for success in your life long-term, whether it's with us or not? And because that's his come from, he's not just dollar focused. I put a lot of money in his bank account. I'm not stopping anytime soon.
Dude, then there you go. Dude, yeah, that's a perfect example. Oh, and the second piece, by the way, is going to be performance plans. So these are the two things you need to know. If for whatever reason somebody goes past those 3 months, but then they miss KPIs 1 month, you have the conversation with them. If it's situational and they're dealing with some circumstantial stuff, then obviously you can accommodate that and understand, like, it's very one-off, temporary. But if it is not that, and they just miss for other reasons, then you do a 30-day performance plan with the expectation of knowing what the repercussion is to miss again. So these are the two things: scorecards and performance plans.
Yeah. When you're doing a performance plan, what kind of time frame would you typically give someone to shape up or ship out? Is this like a 90-day? 30
days.
Quick.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, because it's already there. You know, like the pipeline's already there. If an outbound, let's say an outbound sales team member, an outbound setter, we call them advisors. So if an advisor were to come in and be with you for 4 months, they've had hundreds, if not thousands of conversations. If they aren't able to turn that around in 30 days, it's because they limited the questions they asked, because we're only limited by the questions we ask. And they chose not to take the action. And the thing is, like, when we hire, and in our opinion, because like we're tripping our way into like a $3 million run rate. And our systems, we feel like, are not, as where they could be, things like that. And it's like, so this is when I've noticed, if you're doing less than $10 million a year, at least, and you're not hiring people based on their ability to want to innovate, you're hiring the wrong person. So everyone you bring into the company, because I consider that to be a small company, 10 million or less. And then, like, in my opinion anyway, and it's like, if you bring in somebody that's not willing to innovate, then you're having somebody there that's just going to do the job, and it's going to hold everybody up.
Yeah. They're going to just maintain. It's not going to have the bandwidth to improve upon, right?
Yeah. You have to hire founder-based mindsets.
My thought process is everyone an entrepreneur, right? Like, you're an entrepreneur in this business. It's your job to develop this role into the bigger role that it could be. Like, I don't want you to just do what I tell you to do. I want you to come up with better things than I told you to do, so that I can create more of an upward pathway for you. Like, I love to ascend people into higher paid positions where there's more responsibility. I want that within a company, but you can't do that with someone not willing to grow.
Yeah. Our sales manager, I won't drop payouts, but like, a lot of our players now make 6 figures a year. Some of them on salaries of 6 figure a year because of where they started with us. Right. People, when they hear us on interviews, I love having our whole team on calls and our groups and stuff like that. And everyone thinks they're shareholders, like, just with the way everyone talks. They're like, are your team shareholders in the company, or what does that look like? And that's how it should be.
100%. Like, it's a team. It's a team sport. Business is a team sport.
Yep.
You got to cut the low players just because maybe it's not a good fit, or maybe it's just not for them, and let the cream rise at the top, and then keep fostering that talent. Dude, I picked up a couple fun things from you today, so I appreciate you dropping that. And for everyone watching, I want you to go down to the comments below, and I want you to drop your 1 to 3 key takeaways from what Robb shared with you today. Don't let this become another piece of content that you passively went through, just wasting effectively another hour of your life. Let this be an opportunity for you to make a real change in your business, so you can close a lot more sales and change a lot more lives. And while you're there, also give some thanks to Robb for coming on here and opening up his tool chest of golden nuggets that have contributed to that award, and all the ones behind him that are yet to come. And Robb, how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more, possibly about just consuming the content that you put out on Facebook and YouTube, which are dope, but also working with you to build their own outbound sales team? What do they do next?
Definitely, man. Well, first of all, if you don't subscribe to this channel, like, if you think this video is good, like, I've known Grant for a while, like, he's going to have some people on this channel. You're not going to want to miss this. So just subscribe. Take a second, just freaking do it. Like, come on, share some love. Like, but dude, you want to come find me, guys, hit me up on my YouTube channel. You can also obviously check that out. Robb Quinn, RobbQuinn. But if you want to work with us, just go to thesalesagency.com. There will be a way, like, we'll link it down at the bottom. There will be something for you to opt in there, whether the website is being reconstructed to be rebuilt or it is built. Like, you can go there and it will direct you somewhere to get a hold of us or opt into something so we can get a hold of you.
I love it. Yeah, the perpetual challenge of an ever-growing company. It's like, well, I don't know what you're going to see on the website when you go there 2 years from now, but there'll be something to help you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we hear the funny story of, hey, you can grow $1 million company without a website. And we've done it. And we know a lot of people have done it without a website. Like, it seems normal in today's day, but.
Oh yeah. I know more people that have surpassed $1 million a year, cash in the bank, not like projected revenue, but $1 million a year cash in the bank without websites than I know people who built businesses starting with a website and grew it from there. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So Robb Quinn on YouTube and Facebook, thesalesagency.com. Go get your mind blown and those sales made. Robb, thanks so much for coming on here, brother. It's been a blast.
Thank you, homie.
We'll have to do this again sometime. If we get enough likes on this video, I don't know, maybe 69 likes, I'll get Robb back on here. All right.
I mean, that's a good number. Let's go, guys. Let's run it.
Let's go. All right. Thanks again. I'll see you soon, brother.
Later.
If you liked that video, just wait till you see the next one. And if you haven't already, go right down below me and hit subscribe.